On today's show, we'll detail who's performing well at the World Championships and Easton Cowan gets set for the Memorial Cup. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. If you would have bet on the Edmonton Oilers to win Game 1, you would have won yourself $150 in bonus bets, because that's exactly what just happened. Connor McDavid ending it in overtime. Big time players, it's special players, special teams. That's what it's all about, baby. Make special plays, and Connor McDavid ends it in double overtime. Our boy Zach Hyman had another goal in this one, now leading the play. Zach Hyman has 12 goals in the playoffs, dude. Like we were flabbergasted by the 50 he had in the regular season. He's got 12 goals in like 13 games in the playoffs. What the hell?
He's got his spot, he's got his office, and he is just working it,
dude. Like legit, it's actually just absolutely insane. That was a crazy game. That was a wild one, but you gotta love it, man. Like once you get this deep into the playoffs, and just the way that it's set up with four of the top 5-6 teams in the NHL, the teams that are there deserve to be there, and it feels like we're gonna get two really good series in both the East and the Western final. Personally, I thought the two teams that were gonna win lost Game 1, so we'll see what the rest of this series has in store for us. As for the World Hockey Championships, Canada remains undefeated there. They defeated they defeated Slovakia 6-3 to move on to the semifinals, where they will play Switzerland in the semis. What's been your impression of Canada to this point so far, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a little bit of that concern when they give up a massive lead, but still find a way to win.
Twice. So, they did it twice.
Yeah, not very. I would say confident to see that happen, but I think they've found their form. Guys are getting their chances. I'll tell you that they haven't had any issues scoring goals in this tournament. No. Defensively, that's where I've always been concerned about Canada, and in net.
Yeah, and that's especially it, right? Like we always talk about, there needs to be some goalie needs to come out of nowhere for Canada, because they haven't had a goaltender since Carey Price, and obviously he's long gone. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury, I guess, like that was the same era, but since then there has not been anyone to take that mantle, right? Generationally, you go from like a Brodeur to a Luongo to a Price, Fleury, but there hasn't been anyone since. Like Jordan Binnington. Does Jordan Binnington really fit in the same name as those other guys? Not in my opinion. So hopefully Canada finds a goalie at some point, man. I don't know who that's going to be. Thought possibly it could have been Carter Hart, but obviously that is not going to happen. But if they can score enough goals, outscore their defensive and goaltending issues, you could still win in the World Championships. And they're being led by a couple of guys. One we know very well, John Tavares, absolutely crushing it at the World Championships. He's got a goal, 8 helpers, 9 points. His goal that he scored was an overtime game winner. And everything that I've heard, everything that I've read, I've only watched maybe 2 or 3 games, so I haven't watched all the games so far. But everybody who's over there, whether it's listening to Chris Johnston do his hits, he wrote about John Tavares today in The Athletic. Mike Johnson has been on TSN doing hits. Whoever speaks about what John Tavares is doing at this this tournament is speaking very glowingly about what he's been able to do. And my question is, Dave, like, where the heck was that 3 weeks ago? Where was it 3 weeks ago when they needed him? He's the captain of the Maple Leafs. Where was this back then? You can only play when you got the red and white Maple Leaf, not the blue and white. What the heck?
I wish I had the answer to that, man. Otherwise, the Leafs would still be in the playoffs somehow.
Probably, possibly.
I mean, it's a little easier doing it against teams like Slovakia, Austria. Who else have they played lately?
Yes. Yeah, I would tend to agree on that one. I was hoping you would bring that up because that's the one thing that I find people are not mentioning. It's like, oh, if he plays this way next season, like the Leafs will be in good shape. Like they'll, of course, they want this Tavares to translate into next year. It's like, yeah, but the competition isn't going to be like tier 2 European talent. It's going to be National Hockey League talent, and that's not what you have at that tournament most of the time, especially when you're facing off against most of the European squads. Sans Sweden, I guess.
Even like Sweden doesn't have their best guys there either, right? Like,
They had a blue line. They got a killer. They got their Olympic blue line.
well, they do. I'm trying to think who's not on Sweden right now. That's still. I mean, Pedersen. I mean, it's mostly up front. I'm trying to think of like the blue line. There are probably a couple
Blue
lingering
line.
somewhere.
They've got Darlene, Hedman is up there. Carlson's out there. They've got like legitimately all of their top blue liners. It's wild. The team that they put together out there. They
Mhm.
are into the semifinals as well, along with who's out there too. Switzerland and Czechia with a massive upset on USA today. 1-0. Czechia upsetting the Americans, eliminating them in the quarterfinals. And David Kampf and company move on to the semifinals, and they're going to play Sweden. Canada gets Switzerland.
Yeah, I would very much like to see obviously a Canada Sweden really
Final.
go far. Yeah, like final would be kind of where I want to see this go. Like this is a huge like we need to think about like why does the World Championship mean so much to certain like to like Sweden, Czechia, Finland. Like this is a huge tournament for them
Yeah,
because
100%.
especially because it's in their own backyard. But and look with the Olympics coming up soon, like they're getting some valuable. They're getting some valuable experience right now. Some players who could factor into those Olympic rosters down the road.
Well, and to maybe go back to Tavares really quickly, like he's a guy who probably had fallen off the radar for Hockey Canada when it comes
Yep.
to the Four Nations tournament next year. Perhaps that's the motivation that he needed to go out there and put together one hell of a tournament this time around. And maybe Rick Nash and company will look around and say, hey, like this guy, he's still got it. Like he
Yep.
could definitely flourish as like a fourth line center on a team Canada if he can still play at this level. So good for JT. Hopefully it can translate and he can continue on and play that way next season for the Maple Leafs as well. Why don't we take a break? Let's come back. Let's chat about a couple of the other Maple Leafs who are in attendance at the World Championships, both of which still alive. So all three of the Maple Leafs who are vying for gold still alive at the World Championship. So we'll get to that on the other side, and we'll help also tee up the Memorial Cup, which starts tonight. So we'll look at the Leafs' top prospect, Easton Cowan, what his schedule looks like, and we'll take a look at a couple of the other draft prospects that are of interest throughout the tournament that you can keep an eye on. So we'll get to all that and more. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there's one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed because Indeed, instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all because you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. They streamline the hiring with powerful tools that help you find matched candidates. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring tool, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest back in 2019. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer good for a limited time. So claim your $75 job credit right now at Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and David Morassutti with you. We are a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcast from audio-wise, and also we can be found on YouTube 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, with brand new Leafs centric content all the way through the playoffs and all the way through the offseason. So make sure that you are part of the Locked On Leafs family to keep locked in what's going on with your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. 3 Leafs still overseas at the World Championships. All 3 still alive and vying for that gold medal. We already talked about John Tavares, who's captaining Team Canada, trying to capture gold for the country. David Kampf is still out there, and his Czechia team upset the Americans today 1-0. So he's out there. And Pontus Holmberg for Sweden, who defeated Finland in the quarterfinals in overtime. They'll play against Czechia in the semifinals. Winner of that will go to the gold medal game. Holmberg is having quite the turn, man. When just, was looking at the stats, seeing what was going on. Pontus Holmberg, 6 assists so far in the tournament. Hasn't scored yet, but 6 helpers. Not too shabby for old Pontus Holmberg, Mitch Marner's favorite player, according to Mitch Marner.
Well, I mean, again, we talk about what this tournament can do for certain players. For Pontus Holmberg, you need to see him get into these sort of situations, playing with high caliber players in games that truly matter. And I mean, what bigger than in this tournament? Obviously, as you mentioned, with Sweden having a pretty good roster and likely to go on a deep run here. You're really happy for the Leafs that Pontus Holmberg is there, and he's obviously not a top forward for Sweden, but still contributing, still finding a way to be productive, and that's kind of what the Leafs are looking for out of him, right? As a player that down the road you need to start augmenting your roster. You look at a guy like Pontus Holmberg to make positive developments, and a term like this only helps.
100%. You love to see him getting a chance to play for his country, getting a chance to extend his season, and like you said, play with some good players. See what he can do, playing with a little bit of skill up at the World Championships. I am curious though, like if you're watching this and you're Brad Treliving, or if you're watching this and you're Craig Berube, are you saying, maybe Holmberg could, churn out a little bit more of a role here? Or do you think you still kind of look at him as, a depth piece, fourth liner, kind of player for Toronto next year?
I mean, look, we saw him play some time on the third line. He's also played on the first line. I think, he's a guy where I would like to see him have an established role. Like when you listen to Craig Berube talk about each guy having a role and knowing what the role is and playing with it, I think that's for like a guy like Pontus Holmberg. This is what you want. We want you to be. This is what we think is going to make you successful. Just go out and do it. I mean, that's going to only help a player like him who, again, has shuffled around the lineup quite a bit, trying to, find his area where he can be most impactful. I think the third line is where I'd like him to be. I think that's lends him well. He's responsible defensively, and he's got some good offensive instincts. So he's kind of got that two-way ability. He just needs to hone in on that role and just grab it and go.
Consistency, right?
Yeah.
We need to see it on a consistent basis when it comes to Holmberg. David Kampf also over there for Czechia. He'll play against Holmberg's Swedish team later tonight. He's got 4 helpers so far in the tournament. So, at David Kampf, at his point in his career, where he's in his late 30s, I don't think there's much progression in Kampf's game. Like, we know what David Kampf is. But it's good to see him over there, and just continue to play that role, continue to, play with a level of consistency that's needed here in Toronto as well. So, as long as David Kampf is out there doing David Kampf things, I guess that's good for the Maple Leafs. I don't really have much else to say
Yeah.
about Kampf over at the World Championships, to be honest with you.
I mean, he's benefiting also from a trio of players being added, right? Pasternak, Nichas, and Zaka. Nikas, sorry, joining Czechia there. So they're going to be a little bit of a deeper team with a little more firepower. But yeah, again, David Kampf, when he got that contract, I'm like, it's a lot to pay for a guy that we know kind of what he is. He's shown, I think, more than maybe what people expected. I don't expect him to reach another level. So he's a guy I feel like he had a down year. He needs to kind of rebound. I think a term like this is good where he can kind of put away the season and just focus on now. Obviously, he's got to show the new coach that he's worthy of, what his role is, which is top penalty kill guy, fourth liner, be that responsible two-way guy. Obviously, more of a defensive guy than an offensive guy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he's someone that I feel like needs to rebound a little bit. I think a term like this again gives him a chance to work on some stuff that maybe he felt like he was coming up short on during the year.
Well, I think it just for David Kampf, it's more so putting him in a position to succeed. David Kamp's a fourth line center.
Yeah.
Like that's what he is. That's where he's going to excel. He had to play up the lineup for a majority of the season. Like when they took Domi out of 3 seed and started playing him up when injuries came or when they started to mess around with the lineup. Then all of a sudden, David Kampf had to play a third line. And that's just punching above his weight a little bit. He's a fourth line center. That's what he is. So, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Craig Berube views him. I would imagine, like you said, Berube is very much a roles guy. And if he sees Kampf as a 4C, he's probably going to play in that role. And then he'll probably address 3C and try and find someone in the offseason to bring in and fill that role who fits the mold a little bit better. So should be, I'm going to be curious. Like that's the one thing that is going to be, awesome about a brand new coach coming in is, we'll get to see a lot of different things that are going to be, trial basis essentially during training camp. And we'll have a lot of fun, I think, breaking that down in a couple of months. I'm really actually looking forward to it. Speaking of things that we're looking forward to, the Memorial Cup kicks off tonight. This came out of nowhere, realistically. I don't, for some reason, I thought it was like a mid-June tournament, and you're like, yesterday we were chatting about it, you're like, it starts tomorrow. We should probably talk about it. It's like, oh, damn, you're right. So we'll kind of tee up the Memorial Cup that kicks off tonight. Leafs top prospect Easton Cowan expected to star once again for the London Knights. So we'll tee up all that on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. It's Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. And kicking off later today, the Memorial Cup down in Saginaw. So the Memorial Cup going south of the border for the first time in a little bit. It runs from May 24th to June 2nd. The 4 teams that are taking part is obviously the host team, the Saginaw, Drummondville, the QMJHL champions, the Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL, and then obviously the London Knights, the OHL champions. So those 4 teams will duke it out to see who can come out ahead as the CHL championship. Saginaw Moose Jaw kick things off tonight, and then our guy Easton Cowan will see action tomorrow afternoon against Drummondville. That'll be a 4 p.m. puck drop. So London and Drummondville, a 4 p.m. puck drop. And Easton Cowan is the player to watch that we're really going to be looking forward to watching throughout the duration of the tournament. He just had such an amazing OHL playoffs and an even better OHL final. I mean, are you expecting, for him to level up once again here for the Memorial Cup that could potentially be the end of his junior career?
Well, I think this is a big opportunity for him to kind of showcase himself, right? What better way to show the new coach that maybe you're more of a look for the NHL than putting up it wouldn't surprise me if you see some of the Leafs brass at this tournament, right? Obviously, maybe a little bit of scouting going on, but also to see what Easton Cowan can do, right? This is I'm really excited to see what he can do because I feel like he's only gotten better, right? Like he went on that massive point streak during the season. And everyone was like taking note of that. And what did he do in the playoffs? He just became one of the most dominant players in the OHL. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a London Knights team do what that London Knights team did to Oshawa in the in the OHL final.
Dismantled them. 4-game sweep, and they just crushed him in every game. And Easton Cowan was the MVP of the final, MVP of the playoffs. He had 15 points in that OHL final. 15 points in 4 games, Dave. Like, that's absurd. Finished up the whole playoff with 34 points in 18 games. I mean, he took his game to another level here in the playoffs and was rewarded with an MVP. Could he potentially continue, and try and be the guy who wins MVP in the regular season, MVP in the playoffs, maybe MVP of the Memorial Cup tournament, and try and win, the trophy, every trophy he possibly can throughout his junior career? I wouldn't be shocked, man. Like that's a good London Knights team, a really good London Knights team, led by the cowboy Easton Cowan. So I'm really excited for it. Like I said, I'll be tuned in watching these games because I want to get a glimpse of Easton Cowan. I've watched a couple of London games this year, but the Memorial Cup it's just different. Like it hits different. It's a really quick like week-long tournament where if you win, essentially you play 5 games. That's it. Get 3 round robin games. And if you win your first playoff game, you move on to play in the final. That's it. 4 teams, and you get 4 or 5 games. And Easton Cowan knows that he's got 5 games to showcase himself, and I think he'll come out and put up some pretty darn special numbers, I would imagine, especially if the OHL final showed us anything about what he does when the moment gets big. So the other games that he's going to be playing, so London and Drummondville Saturday. The Knights are playing Moose Jaw on Monday, and then Saginaw on Wednesday. So Saturday, Monday, Wednesday to wrap up round robin play, and then hopefully he's in the championship come June 2nd. Any other draft prospects or prospects that are kind of interesting to you at the Memorial Cup this year? Like there's a couple of draft prospects that I saw. Obviously take a look at Easton Cowan's teammate, Sam Dickinson, defenseman. He's, kind of touted as a potential top 10 pick defenseman, big body, 6'3", 199 pounds, put up 70 points this year with the London Knights, put up an additional 13 throughout the playoffs. So Sam Dickinson's going to be one to keep an eye on. Zane Perrick, another offensively driven defenseman, who had 99 points, I believe, in the OHL this year. So Zane Perrick was that guy's unbelievable for Saginaw. So he's going to be a really fun player to watch as well.
Yeah, I think Sam Dickinson is probably the guy to watch. I think I know Jason Bukla and his kind of ranking, like in terms of prospect reports that he's like a top pairing defenseman guy to watch. When you talk about like even guys that Cal will be going up head to head against, Matthew Savoy is going to be one. I can't wait to see that battle. Right, he's an electric player for Moose Jaw. Big reason why Moose Jaw is in this Memorial Cup. Pretty sure they eliminated Fraser Minton
Yes, they did.
to get there. So he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on there.
I think Owen Beck for
Yeah,
Saginaw.
Owen
Another
Beck, you
guy.
got Oliver Bonk, who's playing for London, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, but if you're looking at like draft prospects, Dickinson and Zane Perrick are going to be the two
Yeah.
really to keep an eye on there.
Neither of which, unfortunately, I think will last long enough to where they kind of factor into what the Maple Leafs are going to be doing. Although, wouldn't mind adding either of those defensemen to the Maple Leafs, especially probably Sam Dickinson. With that type of size at that age, probably going to be a pretty good defenseman. But yeah, with the Leafs being at 23, both those guys expected to go in the first half of the first round. Probably not going to be um, you know, around when the Leafs pick later on in the draft. But either way, they're going to be intriguing players. If you are, a draft nut and you're interested, those are kind of the two big draft prospects for this year's 2024 draft that are going to be around like first round picks, guaranteed first round picks at least for this year's Memorial Cup. So again, it's not a very strong draft. So it kind of makes sense that there's just not a whole lot of top round talent that are in these at the Memorial Cup this year, but it doesn't matter because honestly, I'm just excited to see what Easton Cowan can do, and that's kind of the one prospect that I care most about to watch and see what he can do. Not only from a Leaf perspective, but just because he's just a great player. He's been so fun, and he's been torching the Ontario League. Now he gets to play the rest of Canada in Drummondville and Moose Jaw. And we'll see what he can do. I'm excited for it.
I am excited, and he doesn't play until day 2 on Saturday.
Yeah.
So for those wondering, I think 4:00 on Saturday is when they play Drummondville. So that'll you'll get your first opportunity there, and then Monday they'll play Moose Jaw. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what he does. A tournament where he's got a chance to really put a stamp as one of the top prospects, right? Maybe not the top prospect in hockey, but at least
One
in
of.
junior hockey, right?
Yeah, one of for sure. I think he could be considered one of at this point. The season that he's had for sure. We'll see. Exciting stuff. Exciting stuff. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Lockdown Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at _Morassutti and follow the show as well at Lockdown Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Easton Cowan, puck drop at 4 p.m. I believe it's on TSN is where the Memorial Cup lives this year. So be sure to watch that. And we'll come back and we'll talk about it on Monday. But until then, keep locked right here on Locked On Leafs.